Data Voyagers.
Hello, Data Voyagers. Here we are for one more episode, and for the first time, we broke down a topic into two episodes. So we're talking about fallacies in data, and we had the data. We have the episode. I'm sorry, where we discuss why the data is not the truth, and there's a lot of fallacies. And today we'll talk about the danger of trusting numbers. In the previous episode, we talk about how data can mislead us without us even noticing, how bias, assumptions, and fallacies crept into analysis long before dashboards are built. Now, in this episode, the second part of that series, the second and final part of the series, we'll go one step further because the real danger is not bad data, it is trusting the numbers too much. Yeah, that is true. I said it. So trusting them without questioning where they came from, who is missing, what was filtered out, and what assumptions were quietly baked in along the way. From selections bias onward, this episode is about the moment numbers stop being signals and start becoming authority. When clean data sets hide uncomfortable truths, when metrics look solid but reality is anything but. This is not an episode about rejecting data. It's not about data quality. It's about learning when not to trust it blindly. So, as always, I am Igor Alcantara. I haven't changed my name or who I am. And with me is my friend and co-host, Angelika Klidas. Angelika, thank you for being here.
Hi Igor and hallo allemaal in Nederland. Sometimes I get a little bit mixed up when I have to speak two languages. It's great to be here again, Igor. Looking forward to this section again.
Exactly. Yeah, that's going to be great. And we're about to start, but before, just a few reminders. As always, subscribe to the Data Voyages podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Amazon Music, whatever audio app you have. You will find Data Voyages podcast, and you can subscribe to it. And while you're there, give us 5 stars because those two tasks, subscribing and giving up 5 stars, help us reach a larger audience. And follow us on social media. So we are now in actually two social media. So we, as always, follow our page on LinkedIn. So go to LinkedIn and you search for Data Voyages. You see our logo. Follow us. We are over 1,000 followers, and not only the podcast, the blog, and everything else. Now, Angelika started like writing for a blog as well, so you can find her articles there. Visit our website where you can also find our online store with cool stickers and mouse pads and t-shirts and gym bags and a lot of cool stuff about data and science and voyages in general. So our website is datavoyages.net. And I mentioned that we are also now in a second social media. We are also finally also on Instagram. We mentioned that will be soon. Now we are on Instagram. So if you go to Instagram, you can find us at instagram.com/Data Voyages Podcast. Altogether, no space. Data Voyages Podcast, one word. You find us there. We'll just started, so we not even have at this moment 100 followers. So we want to reach much larger audience. We're close to 1,000 listeners every episode. So we want to get closer to that in our social media as well. And support us in any way you like. You can share the episodes, like the episodes, comment, send to your friends and colleagues. Support us. And talking about support, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor, IPC Global. Ready to move ClickSense or ClickView to the cloud and want it done fast? IPC Global specializes in rapid, secure migrations to Qlik Cloud, keeping your data, dashboards, and users running without disruption. We've done it. We know the shortcuts, and we know how to avoid costly mistakes. If speed matters and results matter, IPC Global is your partner. Call us or visit ipc-global.com today. IPC Global. Move faster, analyze smarter. All right, so let's get this episode started. And it is all about the beginning of this episode selection, because I think we might make mistakes when we starting the whole process by selecting data, right, Angelika?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think it's also very difficult to select the appropriate things that we need. So when we talk about selection and selection bias in this case, it happens when the way we include or exclude data points systematically, and that shapes the outcome of the analysis. And it's not always intentional, and sometimes it even feels practical, and sometimes it even feels necessary to do it that way. But selection is never neutral. Selection bias usually appears when we start filtering data before we start understanding it. As an example, a university wants to study whether their new online learning program improves student grades, right? I'm a lecturer at a university, so for me it sounds very possible that we want to look at the numbers. So we do a survey, and this university, they survey only the students who completed the program and got good grades. The result shows that 95% of the students improved their grades. And the university thinks, okay, the program is excellent. However, they ignored the students who started the program but dropped out, or those who completed but not saw no improvement, or the students that not have completed the program. By only selecting students with positive outcomes, they create a biased picture. And the real truth might be that only 40% of the students who tried the program actually benefited from it. But selecting only the success stories, the university made the program look much better than it actually is. That is selection bias. The sample is not representative because we only selected certain people, those with the good results, which distorts the picture. So the truth is, therefore, we remove outliers because they look messy. We remove, or we don't even include all the records that we need, as we just mentioned in the example, because they slow down analysis, and we focus on who completed the journey and ignore those who dropped out. And each decision makes sense in isolation. Together, actually, they rewrite reality. And selection bias is especially common in performance analysis. We analyze successful projects and ignore the ones that were cancelled. We study retained customers and exclude the churned ones. We measure productivity only among those who stayed long enough to be measured. And the result is an analysis of persistence, not effectiveness. And that means that the research of or analysis looked at how long something or someone continues, persistence, but not whether that effort actually produced the desired result, the effectiveness. And example forms, for example, that we can use in our analysis are feedback forms, ratings, self-assessments. They are useful, but they measure perception, not behavior. When you fill in an assessment or a self-assessment, people answer how they feel, how they want to be seen, how they remember events, not how events have happened. And treating self-reported data as the objective truth is a fallacy that leads to flawed conclusions. And people do not report facts. They look at their memories, they report about that, or they report about their feelings, or they report how they want to be seen. And memory is imperfect, right? Context around it shapes the answers. So social expectations influence the responses that we get. So people often say they will do something, but in reality, they do something different. Self-reported data is especially vulnerable to bias. People overestimate positive behaviors and underestimate the negative ones. So they rationalize the past actions. They answered how they perceive things instead of descriptively. The data is not lying, it's human. And another issue is timing. Answers depend on heavily on when the situation is asked. A recent experience dominates the response. A single event colors the entire assessment. The results feel precise, but it's fragile, right? And the danger appears when self-reported data is treated as an objective truth. So when the survey results are analyzed as if they were behavioral logs, when subjective ratings are interpreted as factual measures, used alone, self-reported data creates confident but very shallow insights. So the antidote to this is to provide context and combination. So use self-reported data to understand perception, use behavioral data to understand action. And when both of those align, confidence increases. When they diverge, the learning begins. Because perception actually matters. And it's not the same thing as reality. Well, Igor, enough said about selection bias. We have another one, and that is super important. And this time it's about correlation and the illusion of explanation.
That is right. So, and this is a very easy problem or fallacy to understand when we do it, but it's also very easy to do it because it's very natural. Correlation is one of the most seductive patterns in data analysis. So, let's say you have two variables, they move together, and you look at them in the chart, and it looks clean, looks pretty. The relationship feels obvious, and almost immediately we want to explain it. So, correlation tells us that two things change together, they move together. It does not tell us why. It does not tell us A is the cause of B. But the human mind is uncomfortable with the gap, with knowledge gaps. We don't handle that. And we had episodes in the past where I discussed these concepts. Knowledge gaps are uncomfortable. We do not accept the I don't know answer. We have to fill out our not knowledge with something, with stories. Oh yeah, these things are happening simultaneously. So one thing must be causing the other. It's not directly, maybe then indirectly. If not always, then usually. And the explanation rushes in before we actually do the investigation. Let me give you an example. A classic example in politics. When a politician comes and say, I'm being taught from crime, an increasing number of police on the streets. We making more arrests. Therefore, look at the numbers. Crime is decreasing. Well, there's a lot of studies that shows that increasing police does not decrease necessarily crime. There's other things, short and long term, that actually decrease crime, like investing in education, in jobs opportunity, etc. Increasing police usually just increase arrests, but you still need to have the need to keep arresting people because crime does not drop. But when they say I increase police or I'm tough on crime and look what happens, crime decreased. What they're trying to tell you is that because by the way, those two things might be true. Maybe they have more investment in police, and also at the same time there is decrease in crime. What they are trying to make you understand is that because of I did A, we have the outcome B, which is not necessarily true unless you have an actual explanation, unless you have a study that shows, okay, I did this and then that happened. It's not necessarily true. It might be a coincidence, it might be something else. It might be something that was already happening before and it's just still keeps happening because of some other reason. It might be something that is happening everywhere, not just in the place where we increase police, etc. It might be other explanations. Um, so that illusion becomes stronger when the correlation is strong. So let's say I have a tight relationship, and that feels convincing. A high coefficient of correlation feels almost authoritative. And a claim visualization feels like, oh, that's the proof. Look at that chart, is the proof. Let me tell you that it's not. Strength does not imply causality. Consistent does not imply direction. And A does not necessarily cause B. Two variables can move together because of the third factor, because of feedback loops, because of coincidence. Could be. Relationship also invites to oversimplification, which is easy for people to understand, but it's so dangerous because you're missing the point. And you creating false hopes or false conclusions, and you invest in money and time in the wrong place. This multifactorial behavior is explained sometimes by a single driver. So this specifically is specifically dangerous in business and in social systems where causes are layered and delayed and interdependent. So something that I do today, and then I have some like other thing changing tomorrow, next week, or next month. They might not be related because something, a policy or something that I changed today, I might only see the results of that after 1, 2, 3 years. So it's very premature to make those conclusions. And using chart to prove a point, it simplifies reality. And the explanation using that oversimplifies it even further. And another trap appears when correlation aligns with intuition. Intuition tells me if I invest in police because they're designed to fight crime, and then I see a decrease in crime, it's my intuition tells one is the cause of the other, not necessarily. So if the relationship matches what we already believe, then we even stop questioning. We have like the funnel vision, which is a problem. We accept explanation because it feels right. We repeat it because it sounds reasonable. And correlation then becomes confirmation. And the real danger is not that the correlation is misunderstood, that is over trusted, which is a big problem. So correlation is a signal there is something there that you might investigate. And it's not that, oh, there's a correlation, there's nothing there. No, there's something there you might want to investigate. But it's not a conclusion that okay, I'm ready. There's a correlation here, so I understand it at all. I don't need to investigate. No, that's not what it tells you. It tells where to look, not what to believe. And the antidote for that is discipline. It's skepticism. Asking what else could explain the relationship. Testing alternative hypotheses. Actually, doing hypothesis testing is a good way to understand if there is a causal relationship. Looking for temporal order mechanisms, contra examples, and good analysis resists the urge to explain too quickly, because when correlation becomes explanation, understanding gives away to storytelling, which is not about understanding the reality, understanding the truth. We always say correlation is not causation, and we have to keep saying it so people actually understand. Correlation is not causation, and not even in indirection. Maybe if they are, but not necessarily A causes B. Maybe B causes A, things like that. So, Freakonomics, the original book and documentary, they have a lot of examples like that.
And so you have to be aware of spurious correlations, right?
Yeah, spurious correlation, like the famous shark attacks and ice cream sales. There's more ice creams being sold, there are more shark attacks. And people say, okay, yeah, let's ban ice cream. Ice creams are bad because people are dying by shark attacks because they're eating ice creams. No, they just happen at the same period. In the summer, it's hotter. People go to the beach, they swim, they got attacked. And also it's hot, and they buy ice cream. So there's 100% not causal correlation, but they just happen to happen at the same period of time every single year.
Exactly.
Some others are not so simple. I might take some, let's say, quote unquote, medical treatment or an alternative medical treatment, and I get better. And I think, oh, that treatment worked. No, you will get better anyway. Like, let's say you have a cold, a flu, after some time, most of people get better anyway. It's not because you took like a water pill or something, or some crazy kind of treatment, that you actually was cured of that disease. No, it's just because coincidentally you had that medication, and because time is a factor, your body produces um, antibodies that will actually fight that disease, fight the viruses, fight the infection, that you get better eventually. So
Exactly.
be careful about that.
Yep.
Now,
It remains an interesting topic,
yeah,
Igor. Yeah.
and there's another thing that's also I'd like to mention here, not related to correlation, but actually in addition to that, which is um, one of the when we there was one of the main topics in the statistics when we study statistics is distribution. Distribution is basically how what is the shape, what is the behavior of a certain sample or data population. So let's say we're talking about the height of a population, or we're talking about the average temperature of a particular region. So then we plot all of the observations and we have a distribution. And in nature, most of the distributions, and if you have a big enough sample, most of the distribution follow what we call a normal distribution. And the normal distribution exists because of a simple reason, which, I mean, we can just have another episode just to discuss that, is a long thing. But not understanding that leads to not understanding something very natural, which is the regression to the mean, which is, you want to explain more about that?
Yeah, well, regression to the mean, it's a statistical concept that can be explained in a very simple way, right? If a result is extreme on the first measurement, the second measurement will tend to be closer to the average. A few examples, right? It's about extreme results. The concept applies when you observe or an unusually high or unusually low outcome. And this could be an incredibly high test score, a record-breaking quarter for a salesperson, or a terrible day on the stock market. And extreme outcomes tend to normalize over time, right? High performance falls back, low performance recovers. I even was reading about it, and I saw something about the lucky hand. I was reading about it. One basketball player can have 50 points in one game, and the next game he probably will not receive the 50 points. So the lucky hand. And actually, when you look at a regression to the mean, it means that it's one of the most misunderstood ideas in the statistics, and also one of the frequently misinterpreted ones in practice. Right? If you have a student who normally scores about 85% on tests suddenly gets 100, he likely studied hard. It's a skill set, right, that he developed. But also he got lucky because the question matched exactly what he has learned and what he knew best. On the next test, he will probably score closer to their normal 85 average and not another 100%. And the other example was the player, right, the sports performance. That's also an issue there. So they say that it's called a Sports Illustrated curse, right? When an athlete who appears on the cover after an amazing performance often sees declines afterward. But also when we look at businesses, employee performance, a new employee has a terrible.
Can I just explain
Sure,
a little
sure,
bit,
please.
a little in more detail that Sports Illustrated curse? So Sports
I know you
Illustrated
are
for
a
the
sportsman. You are a
I am,
sportsman.
and for the people who are not in the US and doesn't follow sport, you might not be familiar with Sports Illustrated. So Sports Illustrated is a magazine. So there is this belief in many people that once an athlete is the cover of the magazine, is the cover of Sports Illustrated, then it's a curse, because then after that, that athlete drops its performance. But that is
Yeah.
not a curse. we can mathematically explain that is basically the regression to the mean. If you are selected among all sports, all athletes to be the cover on that particular month of that magazine, is a monthly magazine, then it means that you did an extraordinary performance. Like you, let's say you're a quarterback and you score 5, 6 touchdowns in a game, something like that, or you're a basketball player and you score like 50 points in a game. That is extraordinary. When I say extraordinary, it means um, beyond what is ordinary, beyond what is expected, what is normal. So it was an extreme value, as you mentioned. So that was the exception. So the performance dropping is expected, regardless of appearing on the magazine or not, is expected because, well, guess what? If I'm 80% performance, let's say, student, that's what expected. When I score 60%, that's an exception. Maybe I had a bad day. When I score 100%, maybe the exam was unlikely too easy. Maybe I was unlikely, I don't know, more focused on that day, particularly, is the exception. So regression to the mean.
Yeah.
Now, about
Exactly.
you're talking about employee performance.
Yeah, so if a new employment had a terrible first week, making many mistakes, and their manager might think, oh, they are incompetent, but however, the employee was just likely just nervous and unlucky. And as they settle in, their performance will probably improve and move closer to the company's average. Aggression to the mean. Um, so let's continue. So regression describes a simple reality. Extreme outcomes tend to move closer to average over time. Very high values often decrease and very low values often increase. And that's what you just explained it with the Sports Illustrated, right? It's not a curse. It's regression to the mean. So it's not by something that has changed, but because extremes are unlikely to persist. And the fallacy appears when we interpreted this natural movement as a cause and an effect. A team has usually good quarter and then runs to the normal performance. We attribute the decline to loss of our focus or bad decisions. Or a system fails dramatically and then it stabilizes. We credit the interventions that followed the failure. So in both cases, the change would likely have happened anyway. So regression to the mean is especially dangerous because it feels like action works. So we take action to it and we think it works. We intervene after an extreme event. The system moves back towards the average. The intervention seems to be successful. And remember the action, but we forget the statistics. And this creates false confidence in strategies that had no real impact. In performance management, this fallacy creates false narratives. Top performers are praised for consistency they never had, and low performers are blamed for volatility they cannot control. That's why I also believe that the sales targets and everything, it's not a good thing, right? It's not a good thing. Um, People are rewarded or penalized for randomness. Well, I know my sales guy, he had to go to the director and he got kicked in the butt because he didn't perform the last month. But sales is a complex process, right, Igor?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I see
Yeah.
that in a lot of, there's an example of that, very popular, is where there was a flying structure, I think a military flying structure. And he said, I cannot praise or compliment my students because every time I do, next time they fly, they have like terrible performance. So if they have like a great fly and they come back and I say, yeah, great job, it's terrible. Maybe they become distracted. I don't know what it is. Maybe they become more I don't know, arrogant, cocky. But the next fly they do, it's way worse. But if they do like a bad flight and I scream at them, I yell at them, then the next flight is great. Well, it's not the strategy of encouraging or yelling at people that actually changes the outcome. What changes the outcome is regression to the mean. If they have like an amazing flight that is extraordinary, it's
Yeah.
an exception. It's an extreme value. If they have like a horrible flight, it's also an exception. So in that case, your attitude will not interfere at all. Maybe different attitudes, and then correlation and causation. You need to understand through an actual study what actually works, or maybe helping them understand. Okay, you did bad because of A, B, and C. You did great because of F, um, G, and H. Then you might be able to help. So be careful, because a
Yeah.
lot of times what you experience is regression to the mean.
Yeah, exactly. So regression to the mean misleads in experimentation as well, right? When extreme groups are selected for testing, improvement is almost guaranteed. I think in your research that most likely has happened as well, and you are very accurate and will take this in account, but we need to be aware of that, because it's not about the treatment that works, it's because the extremes tend to soften over time. Without the proper controls, result looks very convincing and conclusions might be wrong. So the antidote here is humility. Recognize that not all change is meaningful. Not all improvement is caused by something. Not all decline is a failure. Understanding regression to the mean reminds us that variation is not the enemy. Misinterpretation is. And we have another one, and I hope we can discuss it together again. We wanted to talk about KPI worship, right? When metrics replace meaning. And KPI worship is a very negative term. It's used in business to describe a situation where a company becomes so focused on achieving specific key performance indicators, KPIs, that it loses sight of the bigger picture and the actual goals those KPIs were meant to represent, right? It's about hitting the target, and that becomes more important than doing the right thing. Right, Igor?
Yeah,
And what happens at
absolutely.
that moment? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In that moment, we do something that is subtle and dangerous.
Mhm.
As you said, the KPI is a metric,
Yeah.
is a signal of performance. It cannot become the goal. It has to be some other goal. Um, and actually, that dynamic is very well known in the statistics. They even have a name. We call this the Goodhart's law.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is when a
And
measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a
exactly,
good measure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But it's a proxy, right?
it is. It is. It is a. It is a proc. A KPI now. Originally, it's a proxy. It's a basically it's a simplified representation of something complex. It's a way to monitor
Mm.
behavior, outcomes, or performance. But over time, the proxy replaces the thing it was meant to represent. Um, can I give you? Let me give you an example. It's a very again classic example when we studied the Goodhart's law.
Mhm.
When I taught that in university back in Brazil, and that's the example I gave. I don't remember the details, the year, etc. But um, when India was part of the British Empire, was a colony of
Mhm.
the British Empire, they were having problems with like too many snakes in a particular area, particular region. They have too many snakes, and they want to eliminate these snakes. So they, instead of like hiring a lot of people, which would be expensive, they said that they created this program where basically they will reward people
Yeah.
who kill the snakes, but they
And
don't
they had to
simply
bring it
kill
to
the
the
snake.
government or to the municipality. They had to bring it.
You have to bring it to prove, okay,
Yeah.
I killed
Yeah.
6 snakes,
And I
and
get some
that
money.
yeah, that the KPI became the goal. But the goal was not the KPI. The goal was not to have X number of snakes killed. The goal was to actually solve the snake overpopulation problem. What
Exactly.
happened when they became that,
Yes.
when they over they give an extreme value to the metric. What happens is then people started to raise snakes at home, and then when they were big enough, they killed the snakes and brought the dead snakes to get the
Exactly.
money.
Yeah.
So when the government found out, they stopped the program, and then people released the snakes, and the problem was worse.
Yes, exactly. I use that story always
Yeah,
in my education. So yeah, it's a great example. But we have another one, right? Um, for example, in a business, we want our customers to be very satisfied. And the KPI, in this case, the proxy, we measure the net promoter score, NPS, or the customer satisfaction score, CSAT, right? And the danger, as we see in KPI worship, arises when you forget that the NPS score is just a proxy. You start to fixate on increasing that number, and even when it means annoying customers with constant surveys, and in that case, you are optimizing this proxy, not the actual goal, the customer satisfaction. And in short, the KPI is the shadow on the wall, not the object casting the shadow. It's a mistake to try to understand, to change the shadow instead of the object itself. And that's again Goodhart's law, right? In other words, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And in fact, what happens is that response time targets lead to rushed low quality resolutions. Engagement metrics encourage shallow interactions. Productivity measures reward visible activity over meaningful work. So the KPI improves and the system quietly degrades. And over time, the metric begins to lie. And not because the data is wrong, but because the behavior has been changed. And what used to reflect reality is now being manipulated, optimized, or gamed. And we love games, right, Igor? And sometimes intentionally, sometimes unconsciously. And worst of all, KPI worship also narrows thinking. When one metric dominates, trade offs disappear from the conversation, side effects are ignored, and long-term impact is deprioritized and context fades. We only see the number of the proxy that is decreasing or growing, and that's the momentum that we want to keep. So the organization at the end becomes efficient at achieving the wrong thing.
yeah. Can I give you another example?
Sure.
Again, in customer satisfaction, let's say I've seen that in hospitality business a lot of times. I see that in support, like IT support business as well. You get like a hotel that said, "Oh, we are most like 95% 5 stars rating by our customers," and even support. Yeah, I mean, we our average satisfaction is 5 stars. Oh, great, amazing. And then you start asking, all right, let me ask the right question. How many of your customers give a review? How do they actually give a review? Do we remind them? You encourage them? Because what I've seen happen often, like in hospitality, like when a hotel or a support team, they know they did a great job, and they know that you love them. They'll send you multiple emails, remind you to take the survey. Sometimes they even send you like, oh, if you answer this survey, it will give you like a gift card or something. Um, but if they have a suspicion, if they know you were not satisfied because there was a problem, like there was a water leakage in your room, something, they don't remind you at all. Maybe maybe this auto system sends like a survey thing for you to answer. Maybe it doesn't, but they're not going to remind you again. They're not going to tell you when you're checking out, oh, do you mind giving us a review? And I actually seen that happen when I call support for like any service. Let's say my phone, I call support, and when I not satisfied, and they can tell because my problem was not resolved. They don't remind me at the end. Oh, would you mind staying a little longer just to answer a survey? Most of the time, they don't say that.
Oh.
But when they know they solved my problem, I'm happy based on my tone of my voice. They said, "Oh, you mind staying a little longer to answer a survey?" So that again, if the goal, which is making my customer happy, is replaced by having 5-star rating, then we have a problem. And what is the
Exactly.
antidote for that?
The antidote is remembering actually what metrics are, right? They are indicators, not objectives. They are signals, not destinations. And healthy data cultures treat KPIs as starting points for inquiry, not finishing lines. And why? Because under Goodhart's law, the moment a metric becomes the goal, it stops measuring what actually matters for an organization, for a sportsman, or whatever. So that was KPI worship. Another fallacy when using data, Igor, is believe we have two more to go, but the first one you will explain. It's about some kind of myth.
It is the myth of neutral data, and this is so common. People say, "Yeah, data is data. It's like a fact." So,
Mhm.
and that's actually one of the most persistent beliefs in analytics, that the data is neutral. The numbers are objective. Metrics are unbiased. The dashboard simply reflects the reality. That is not true at all. The data
No.
is never neutral. And we discussed that in many of the biases we discussed in these in the previous episode. Every data set is shaped by human decisions, like what we choose to measure, what are the columns available, what we ignore, how we define events, how we define success, how we define failure. And those choices embed values, priorities, assumptions into the data long before analysis begin. And even the absence of data is a decision. What is not measured is treated as unimportant. What cannot be captured is often ignored. And the data set becomes a reflection of focus, not reality. Let me give you an example. Actually, that's happening right now. I'm working in a research project with many different hospitals on medical residency. And one of the things as part of the study, it's a large multi-year study. And one of the things as part of the study is we are will send to the residents, like to the students in the hospital, surveys that they'll have to answer. And one thing early on that I told people is like, I want to save the responses before they complete. So if they, let's say, have 15 questions, they answer question number one, I want to save it. Question number two, I want to save it. Every single
Mhm.
question, I want to save it automatically. They don't have to click anything automatically. Why? Because if I only save the responses once they complete everything and click submit, that's a bias.
Exactly.
Because who completes a 15 question survey? Well, only the people that who are more engaged.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I did with
Mhm,
for a municipality here in.
mhm,
No, it was for my governmental job,
mhm.
semi-governmental job. We had all kinds of forms, and they only registered what was completed fully. And then I told them, "You're not getting the real picture. Don't you want to know why people are stopping at question 5 or 10?"
Yep.
And
What
then
happened? This is
some,
important because I
what
need to
happened?
know that. Yeah.
Exactly. And it was so weird, and then they start believing me, and then after every question they start saving the questions. So yeah, for
Mhm.
me, very very recognizable.
Yeah. When I see in a lot of like election polls, not a lot, not well designed election polls. Let me be clear. People ask, okay, we have two candidates. Who are you gonna vote? And some of them, they not register people who say, I don't want to answer, I don't know, things like that. So it looks like a certain candidate has 60%, but in reality, 60% of people are undecided. They don't know yet. You need to
Hmm.
register those.
Hmm.
And then the myth of neutral data is especially dangerous because it shifts responsibility. This is very, very important. The data is quote unquote objective, or we believe is objective, then the conclusion feels inevitable. Oh yeah, the data is neutral, is objective, is the truth, is the reality. 1 + 1 = 2 all the time. Well, but the data or the numbers are not just the numbers. Um, and if the data, if we believe that the numbers are just the numbers, then no one feels accountable. It's just the numbers. But data does not remove judgment. It just masks it. Is to disguise it. The antidote for that, as we discuss the antidote for every single one of these problems, is awareness, acknowledging that data is constructed, not discovered. Making they don't exist freely in nature that we go in a data safari and you just observe them. No, they actually
I
they
like that one.
yeah, they are constructed. So when we need to make the assumptions explicit. These are my assumptions. Write it down. Treat metrics as lenses, not mirrors, because data does not tell us what is true. It tells us what we choose to look at it. And now
Yeah.
we have a final one, our
Yeah.
final fallacy. And what do we decide to close this episode and topic with?
Well, it's about the final fallacy: more data equals better decisions. And it's one of the foundational beliefs of the big data era. It's both a powerful truth and a dangerous oversimplification that comes with one statement or three statements. If we collect more, if we store longer histories, if we increase granularity, that, blah, uh, and understanding will follow. That's at the end what we want. So let's break it down into more detail. And before I go into there is one interesting project that I did at a municipality here in the Netherlands. And there is a department somewhere, and they take care of people who are in debt, right? So you can go to the municipality, ask for money, for help, and they will help you in guiding, but also with money. And my manager said to me, Angelika, I want all the data. And then we said, okay, let's extract all the data. And we did. And then we looked at the data. We started analyzing and trying to build some trend lines and so on, and some analysis reports. And then we saw that process was not filled in, the numbers that they have to fill in during the process, empty fields, wrong filled fields, and so on. And then we started thinking about it. We discussed it in the project group. I was the program manager there. And then we said, okay, let's go back to the manager who gave us the assignment, and let's discuss the cut date, right? The cut in time. So we discussed it with the manager and we showed him the results. And then he said, well, okay, we make a cut in time, do it from this and this date. And then you will see that everything is filled in nicely and that we will have no issues. Well, that was a broken dream because still 200 and something fields were not filled in properly, because it was not a mandatory field while they needed it for their reports. But you can see, so you have to watch and you have to analyze it properly, right? Do you want to add something, Igor? Because I see you in the, I can see you.
Yeah, no, there is a very in machine learning we have something called the dimensionality curse, and actually,
Yeah,
I'm not
you
going to
wrote an
talk.
article
Yeah, I'm
about
not
it.
going to talk much about it. There is an article. There's an article in the Data Voyages blog. So if you go to datavoyages.net, you will find that article. But the curse of dimensionality is basically sometimes adding more data reduces accuracy because it adds noise.
Yeah.
So it is a problem. So we need to understand. We actually need to understand what is the data, because in machine learning it's very common. Oh yeah, just add the data, the model will figure it out. Not necessarily, because the model does not know the business rules, does not know what is noise, what is not. If I'm trying to analyze like student performance and I add things like I don't know, the student horoscope, or I don't know, something like that. It might be just a noise, because
It
we
is,
know there's
yeah.
no impact.
Yeah.
Or if I add, what is the first letter of your name, or things like that, might have an impact, but most likely
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So we need
Exactly.
to be careful of that.
Yeah, so they say it reduces uncertainty. They say it identifies patterns, and it removes bias to have more data. Well, all of those, no. It, in fact, it does not work that way. So more data increases volume, not clarity. And without strong questions, more data simply creates more noise. That's what you just said. And without context, more detail creates more confusion. And without judgment, more information creates false confidence. And we have an example for that, right? You told it also in your article, "The Curse of Dimensions." When an AI model is trained to screen job applicants using a decade's worth of hiring data, if the company historically favored hiring men for technical roles, the data is biased, right? And the AI will learn this bias and systematically discriminates against female applicants. So more data just automated a bad biased decision. Even the story of Amazon, I think you know that one too, right, Igor? It's about that they wanted to have a HR recruitment system, uh, right? And that they had all kinds of data in it, but in this case, they also favored men in this case. And the women, and even when women or a women-ish kind of writing was added into the resume, it was filtered out. Well, they fixed it, of course, but bias in high volume of data is very, very, very nasty and can happen easily if you don't watch. And there is also a hidden cost, right, Igor?
Yeah, so there are some hidden costs, because data is not free. I mean, as data
No,
grows,
no, 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 no.
yeah,
Yeah.
interpretation also becomes harder. The signals get, I mean, I'm not even talking about the cost of storing that more data, but like, data grows, interpretation becomes harder, signals get buried under variability, decision making also slows down, because it's you're adding more complexity into the analysis and the
Yeah.
processing, and all. So what feels like rigor turns into paralysis. Um, and more data can also reduce accountability, right?
Yep, exactly. And when decisions fail, it's easy to hide behind the complexity. The data was fast or the system was complicated. And therefore, responsibility diffuses. Better decisions do not come from more data. I know you have a favorite saying, less is more, right? That's what I do as well. Less is more. Keep it simple. Um, the answers come from better questions, clear intent, and disciplined interpretation. Data is a tool, not a substitute of thinking. That's why I always tell my story to in my requirements analysis. Please try to get your user story to the point by asking questions. You don't know how? You can drop the user story into a Gen AI solution and ask for help in defining 20 Socratic interviewing questions. Then you will get a more sharp answer to the questions that you had. So, for my opinion, better decisions come from asking the right questions, using high quality, relevant data, interpreting it in a correct way, and combine it with human judgment and context. Right, Igor? Do you have something to add to this last fallacy?
No, no, but I think overall, I mean, we recorded 2 episodes about the
Yes.
fallacy of data, and the fallacy of data
Mm-hmm.
is not that the numbers are wrong, um,
No.
is that we expect them um, to think for us. We treat data as objective, final, unquestionable. Oh, it's the numbers, not me. But we trust metrics more than context, dashboards more than curiosity. And when we do that, we stop being responsible for our decisions. It's like when I'm analyzing how well this project is going and analyze just based on blindly numbers without the context, without understanding that the customer keeps adding, changing stuff, and without analyzing other context. So data does not explain the world, and this is so important that I'll say it again. Data does not explain the world.
Nope.
It is very important, but it reflects the choices we make about what to measure and how to measure. So we need to combine data with thinking, as we discussed so many times during these 2 episodes.
Exactly.
Every fallacy in this and the previous episode comes from the same place. The moment we stop questioning what the data is really telling us, and
Yep.
we trust just the data blindly, thinking it's neutral, unbiased, that kind of stuff. Data does not remove uncertainty. It only helps reduce ignorance. The goal of analytics is not certainty, is to ask better questions. And actually, you say that so many times, Angelika, and it's so true. The goal is to ask better questions. And when data help us ask those questions, it is finally doing its job. Angelika, thank you so much. In this journey of these 2 episodes. Again, welcome to 2026. Is the beginning of our season. We have a lot planned, and also, right, thanks our listeners to keep riding this journey with us.
Yeah. Keep on tracking us, listen to us, give us 5 stars. And if you have any topic that you would like us to discuss, please let us know. We will put it in the agenda and try to talk about it, and even maybe invite guests, right? So we are in a long preparation for Qlik Connect because we have a busy schedule there.
Mhm.
Igor is doing his presentation. And I'm
You're doing your
going to-
panel, 2
I'm
panels.
doing the panel, 2 panels.
Mhm.
Of course, representative of the woman who Qlik, and some recordings in between. So, guys, let's do this. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks
Thank
again,
you,
Igor.
everyone. Thank you. And keep exploring, folks, and keep asking better questions. Goodbye. See you next time. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. Bye.